Hello and welcome. As the wife of one of Britain's most prominent prime ministers, she played the part of politician, diplomat, activist and mother of four. Now, as a legal advocate and campaigner for justice, she's back on the front line of human rights issues. This week on One on One, meet lawyer and activist Cherie Blair. She was born in Bury, Lancashire, but her parents moved to Liverpool while she was still very young. By the time she had turned 8, her father, actor Tony Booth, left Cherie and her sister Lindsay to be raised by their mother Gail and their paternal grandmother Vera. Cherie Booth excelled at school with top grades and went on to study law at the London School of Economics. It was in 1976, while studying to become a barrister, that she met Tony Blair, and 4 years later they married. The Blair family soon filled out with 3 children, but it was the late, unexpected arrival in 2000 that made the headlines when little Leo arrived. Although Cherie Blair did run unsuccessfully for office in Kent for the Labour Party, it was of course her husband who propelled the couple onto the world stage when he became Prime Minister. Soon Cherie Blair was meeting global figures from the Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat to US President Bill Clinton, who became a close family friend. As Tony Blair's time in office came to an end, his wife returned to her legal roots, working at an international level for human rights, being a founder member of the Matrix Chambers in London, where she continued to practice as a barrister. After so many years facing the usual ups and downs in public life, the Blairs have managed to keep themselves busy, but Cherie Blair certainly appreciates the extra downtime with her husband. Cherie Blair, it's a delight to talk with you. Both you and your husband, Tony, have been incredibly active since leaving 10 Downing Street, and it's still an incredible pace for you. So how has life really changed for you since then?
Well, it is amazing, isn't it, that we have been so busy. I think the biggest change, actually, is that we see less of Tony now than when he was in number 10. And it's strange, really. You'd think that being Prime Minister, we wouldn't see very much of him. But, of course, he lived above the shop. Right. And therefore, he would be at home most of the time. The other thing is Prime Ministers tend to stay in country. And when they go away, they go for short, sharp bursts. Now, of course, he spends a lot of time in the Middle East. And you, of course, have always been quite busy. And I know you focus on a lot of areas. You're involved with more than 20 charities. Which occupies most of your time? Well, I still do my legal practice, because at the end, in my heart, I'm a lawyer. And the human rights advocacy, which I really enjoy. And I do that. But I also do these other things, specifically related to women and children, trying to help across the world raising women's issues, and in particular I'm interested in economic empowerment of women. How do you cram it all in? You do country hop as well. Well, it's true, and I'm beginning to think I'm spending too long on planes, but I do have an 8-year-old, and therefore there's a real incentive to get home. Now, you were mentioning you focus a lot on women and children's issues. How much progress do you feel has been made since when you first started as a young lawyer? And of course, women in law even then was a little more rare. Oh, no, that was for sure. I mean, I think that I've just written my book, Speaking for Myself, and I did that because I thought, being in my 50s, because I'm 54, that 54 years that I lived has seen an incredible amount of progress for women. Certainly in Europe and in America. And when I look back on my mother and my grandmother's life and compare the opportunities that I had compared to the opportunities that they were denied, I realise how lucky I am to have been born when and where I was born. Now, we'll get on to your early years in a moment, but do you find it's hard to adjust to normal life, so to speak? Well, it's been quite fun, really, because after I left number 10, my children gave me an Oyster card to use on the tube and the buses and in London. And when I first got the Oyster card, I said, "Oh, well, I've heard all about this. I'll know how to use it." And then I discovered that as the bus came along and I went to get on, I had no idea what to do, which was a bit embarrassing. And then, of course, everyone was looking and saying, "What is she doing getting on the bus?" But I've mastered the Oyster card now. Now, you were born in Bury, if I say it correctly, Bury, from my days at Radio Lancashire, but moved at an early age to Liverpool. 6 weeks old, very young, yeah. But that early time in the northwest of England, what do you remember of that time? I remember, it seems like another world in many ways now, because this was the mid-50s, early 60s, and we still had a coal fire, we still had lino on the floor. When I was a young girl. There were still steam engines going up and down. We lived quite near a railway. All those things are just complete sort of storybook to my children.
Your father, Tony Booth, was an actor. He left your mother when you were 8 years old, but your mother and your, in fact, your paternal, his mother, your paternal grandmother, Vera, continue to play a big role in your upbringing. And I wonder, when you look back, how do you judge your father now?
Well, I'm on good terms with my father, and though sometimes I think he's more like my errant older brother than my father. It was the women who were the strong ones in my family, as you say, my mother and her mother-in-law. My own mother's mother died when she was 14, which was one of the reasons why she had to leave school, because she had a younger brother and a father who was a minor. And there was no option once her mother died. She had to take over looking after the house. What
about your mother, Gail, and what she went through as well? And how did, watching what she went through shape you and your attitude to life?
Oh, I think it made a huge difference to me. One of the things that has stayed with me for ever, really, is this idea of needing to be, as a woman, to have your own economic independence. Because you never know what might happen. In my mum's case, her husband left her. In my grandmother's case, my grandfather at one time was injured and she had to support the family. And that need to ensure that you have the economic independence to be able to support yourself and your children and to make choices for yourself has certainly stayed with me and is one of the reasons why I'm so interested in helping spread that for women in the developed world.
Now,
developing world, sorry.
Well, as an adult, looking on the characteristics of your mother and father, which of the individual characteristics of your father and mother do you think you inherited?
I think, my father's quite a character, and possibly so am I think that's true. And my mother's is a very determined woman who quietly gets on and makes a difference. And I hope I got that.
Yeah.
Yes, that tenacity.
Now, what about your younger sister, Lindsay? Were you close with her?
Oh, yes, we were very close, the two girls, and we're still close. And, of course, I have this extraordinary position where I have one full sister, Lindsay, who's 2 years younger than me, and then six half-sisters. So my father was definitely a ladies' man.
I was going to ask you on the religious side of your upbringing, though, because your mother and your grandmother were both pretty staunch Catholics.
No, it's my father who's the Catholic.
Oh, okay.
And my mother, in fact, wasn't a Catholic at all, but she used to come along to the church with us. So it has affected me because I'm a Catholic and I still practice my faith and it matters to me. But because my mother wasn't a Catholic, it's partly why I'm interested in other faiths and. My husband, of course, wasn't a Catholic until very recently.
You were the first in your family to go to university. And actually, exceptional results for grade A-levels, which those who know the system know that's pretty much a startling achievement. In what way did that also affect the way you were among your peers? Because, you were one of the smart ones.
Well, it was interesting. I think it was partly, of course, because I was very focused. Because the one thing I knew was that if I didn't get good grades, I wasn't going to get anywhere because I didn't have any contacts. I didn't, no one in my family really knew how to work the system. And the only thing I had going for me was that I was very good at passing exams, and that made me very focused indeed.
And of course, you went through a fairly high-flying, fast track up through the prestigious London School of Economics and went on to become a Queen's Counsel. Is it the kind of career you imagined as a girl? I can't imagine a young girl saying, "I want to be a QC."
No, in fact, when I was 14, I said I wanted to be the first female Prime Minister of Britain. So I was always very interested in current affairs. But I think that if I'd realised at the time just how difficult it was for a woman in the 70s to make it in the law, maybe I'd have been put off, but I had no idea. The nuns at school told me, that if you put your mind to it, there's no reason why you can't achieve your goals. And so I just went for it, rather oblivious to the fact that really someone like me, a female from a working class background who didn't go to Oxbridge, I wasn't meant to be there.
Based on the experiences you've had, and you've been through quite a lot in your own life, how have you guided your own children? You're blessed with 4 kids, in teaching them on how to go forward. Do you pressure them at all?
I try. I'm sure they would say, yes, I do. I try very hard not to. But I think like every mother, you're always anxious that your children don't miss the opportunities which you're very conscious they may only get once. So it's difficult. But I was conscious that they didn't have the same pressures that I had. I had the pressures of coming from a different background, but they, of course, had pressures of their own. I mean, especially when their father was Prime Minister. I mean, it's not always easy to be the child of the Prime Minister, and I think it's also not easy to be the child of a high-achieving father and mother, for that matter.
Would you put them off the idea of going into politics? Is it something they...
No, I would definitely. I think politics is a noble profession. And I think that too often we're very cynical about people who go into public life. I've met so many people in public life, and most of them do not go into public life in order to feather their own nest or because they cynically just want to do the best for themselves. They do so out of a real spirit of public service. Now, not everybody succeeds in living up to those noble standards, but I think everybody starts off hoping to make a difference.
Well, Cherie Blair, I have many more questions for you. We're going to take a short break here. Back with more One-on-One in a moment.